Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Rangana Yasodanandana Brajagana Rangana Nandana Brajagana Rangana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Gopi Janavalabha Girivadhari Janavalabha Girivadhari Yasodanandana Brajagana Rangana Yasodanandana Brajagana Rangana Nandana Brajagana Rangana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Om Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Bhagavacharya Satarya Satyashishi His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Gauda Vaishnavinda Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Sako Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasudeva Gaura Bhaktivinoda Ki His Confounder Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Go Gopinath Shamakun Radhakun Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mayapur Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jamuna Mayi Ki Ganga Mayi Ki Tulsi Devi Ki Bhakta Devi Ki Shishi Radha Golokananda Ki Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda Ki Gaura Premanandi All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Jaya Jaya Shri Chaitanya Jaya Nityananda. Jaya Dvaita Chandra Jaya Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. So we're continuing our reading of the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 10. The trunk, branches, and sub-branches of the Chaitanya tree, and text 114. The 78th branch of the original tree was Jagannatha Tirtha. The 79th was the Brahman tree, Jananatha. The 18th was Gopalacharya. The 81st was the Brahman, Vaninath. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, Jagannath Tirtha was one of the 9 principal sannyasis who were Lord Chaitanya's associates. Vaninath Pripa was the resident of Chanpahati, a village in the district of Borvan, near the town of Navadvip. The police station of Purvasthati and the post office of Samudragada. The temple there was very much neglected, but it was renovated in the Bengali year 1328 and the Christian era 1921 by Paramananda Brahmachari, one of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's disciples, who recognized the Seva Puj, worship in the temple, and placed the temple under the management of the Sri Chaitanya Mat of Sri Mayapur. In the temple, as it now exists, the deity of Sri Gaura Gadadhar is worshipped strictly according to the principles of revealed scriptures. Chanpahati is 2 miles away from both Samudragda and Navadvip station of the Eastern Railway. Omaganda Timrandasya Gananjana Shilakaya Chakshumritam Yena Taismai Shri Gurave Namaha. So this deity of Gaura Gadadhar, we've seen Gaura Narayan, Gaura Nityananda, is primarily what we see here in America. I don't think there's any Gaura Gadadhar temples in ISKCON. Maybe there are. I don't think so. But this is Gadadhar, which is Lord Chaitanya's associate. So on the altar you have Lord Chaitanya and you have Gadadhar, not Nityananda. And so this is a completely different mood of worship. When you worship these different, Lord Chaitanya is in a completely different mood when he's with Gadadhar as opposed to with Nityananda, because Nityananda and Lord Chaitanya is the mood in the Radharani. And this is why in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, the chapter we read it about the glories of Advaitacharya, there's a purport where Prabhupada really gets into this rasa bhas when you talk about deity worship. He explains when you on the altar, and the altar is considered the canopy. That's the altar, and what's under that altar affects the mood of the deities who's under that altar. And so you see in temples you have different altars, and underneath, like Krishna Balaram, you have Gaur Nitai on one altar, you have Krishna Balaram on the middle altar, and you have Radhashama Sundar on the right altar. And so Prabhupada talks about this rasa bhas. And when Nityananda or Balaram is around Krishna, and if Radharani is there, she's completely in a different mood in front of his brother. Or in front of elder gopis, or gopas, her mood completely changed. All the gopis' moods changed. And so when the devotees are worshiping the Lord, they, based on your worship, as you develop Krishna consciousness, you have a particular mood. And we're being encouraged to follow a particular mood. Here we have Gadadhar, who was also considered the incarnation of Radharani. So you have this relationship here of Krishna and Radha on the altar. Now, in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita, Sanatana Goswami explains two things what makes the deity real. When you were worshiping the deity in front of the deity, there's two things. One is when it was installation, there's a process of installing the deity. There's a whole ritualistic performance and activities that go on. And these are never the same. Actually, they're actually different every time. Technically, the people who do it are a little bit different. The process is a little bit different. Actually, Prabhupada would install deities, and then actually in Germany, the first deities in Europe were in Germany, and he sent Tamal Krishna Goswami to go install these deities. But he only seen it happen one time. That was in L.A. He never installed deities, and Prabhupada was very busy. He was in London. He couldn't go at the time. So he said, just go, you saw me do it in L.A., just repeat the process. So that's one aspect of it. Sanatana Goswami points out that the second aspect of what makes the deities real is the worship by the devotees who come and sing and chant before the Lord, and they offer foodstuff to the Lord, and they dress the Lord. This is what makes the deities real. This activity, this bhakti, this devotion by the devotees. This is what the other thing. In the Chaitanya Bhagavat, Lord Chaitanya says that he inaugurates two more times in Kali Yuga. One is in the name. And when the name of the Lord is entered into the deity, that makes the deity real, he says. And then, of course, that's also the bliss, the ananda, those two things. So when the devotees are chanting every day in front of the deities, that also, that devotion practice, what makes it real. The mood could be a little bit different of Radharani based on what's happening on that altar. And as our practice develops, then we can understand that mood a little bit more that she might be feeling in the advanced stages of Krishna consciousness. So this is a little bit different temples you have. Then you have, and even in ISKCON, you have temples where you have under the altar Lord Chaitanya. But you don't see Nityananda there because the canopy, Radharani's mood changes. If you used to put Gaura Nitai under the same altar, then her mood would be different with Krishna. And part of our practice is to try to get those two together in a particular mood, Krishna and Radha. We want them together under a particular mood. So we want to do anything that's conducive to bring out this loving relationship between the two. And anything that kind of hinders that relationship, that might separate it to create some separation in the sense of some other individuals being around, like Nityananda or some, even in Vrindavan, people move around, and during the noontime pastimes, when Krishna, leaves the cowherd boys and goes meets Radharani at Radhakund, there are certain sakas who go with Krishna, and they're primarily guarding roads because they don't want just anybody walking in, because it's a place that's real. There's people that move, they travel, they have, whatever commerce they have. So they misdirect people because they don't want to interrupt a particular activity that's going on between Radharani and Krishna. So all these things go on. So this is what we want to do. We want to create this mood of relationship. That's part of the service where we're being encouraged. Of course, it takes some practice, some time to understand these moods. And now we're in an area in Srimad Bhagavatam, I think in chapter 21 now, and we're talking a little bit more about these activities between Krishna and Radharani, and actually more detailed activities are given in the Chaitanya Charitamrita than you're going to see in but there. But it's kind of interesting. There's this one verse that resonates with me. It's in 10th canto, chapter 33, 31. It keeps, and I read different books. It keeps coming back, and it says that one who hears and describes the playful affairs of the gopis, they will attain pure devotional service. 10:33, 39. It's the last chapter of 33. It's after the Rasa, that Rasa Lila. He said, those who hear and describe the playful affairs of the gopis, they will attain pure devotional service. They will quickly become sober and conquer lust, the disease of the heart. And so that's a formula. I read that, and it's like a formula. How can I get over this material contamination that I'm dealing with? Here's a method by how I can do that. But at the same time, we're told that we've got to be very careful. We just can't describe these affairs because, first off, for us to be able to comprehend them is pretty much impossible in our contaminated state. And so it's recommended that be careful about describing these things because we have a material mentality. We can understand something mysterious, spiritual with a material mentality. We have to purify ourselves. But at the same time, it says it will conquer, we will quickly become sober by this activity. And we'll conquer lust, which is the disease. So we have Gaura Lila, which is non-different than Krishna Lila. And in Gaura Lila, we have all these gopis. If we had to become a follower of the gopis, but Lord Chaitanya, Krishna is so merciful that he comes as Lord Chaitanya, and that if we enter into the Gaura Lila, all his associates, that's what we're reading in this chapter. It's been revealed who all these people are. And if we hear about these pastimes and we just study these pastimes of these gopis, then that is going to have the same effect. He's given us that process. How are we going to conquer this material mentality? How that we can conquer this, how cure this disease of the heart. So this happens in Gaura Lila. There's some verses, and we're getting into these verses of pastimes, and it's really a nectar part of Srimad Bhagavatam. But Krishna, when the gopis come and they see Krishna, the first thing he tells them is, you should go back home. You don't, it's not right that you come here. So actually there has to be some separation, but but the main point here is that, of course, they don't come. But then he acknowledges that you've left your homes and you walked out of your houses, and you've given up your family members, which is extremely difficult. You've walked away from something, especially for a young lady who's either married or been promised off, or has her father or her husband. That the position in society is, especially at that time, is extremely important. The virtues of a woman, and because they were really put on a pedestal about the qualities of female virtues. And they've abandoned all that just to be with Krishna. They don't care. They give it away. They walked away. But Krishna says there's no way I can repay you for what you've just done. So let your own glorious deeds be your compensation. So Sanatana Goswami, this is why Gaura Lila is so important. Sanatana Goswami gives an alternative meaning in the Brihad Bhagavatamrita of that verse. He gives an alternative meaning. And he says that another way to understand this is, even though Krishna is inadequately capable of repaying these gopis adequately for what they've done, that maybe in the future, he says, that some of my followers maybe will come your devotees and serve you faithfully. And there again we have Gaura Lila. That's why Lord Chaitanya comes. So we have Gaura Lila. So in this mood of Lord Chaitanya, which we're emulating, all of our activities here, we're emulating this mood of Lord Chaitanya. We're able to get in line behind these acharyas and serve them for what they've done. So this is serving the servant and the servant. So this is why it's so important to understand the relationship and who these individuals are, and to study these individuals, and so why it's so important. Service is so important. And Lord Chaitanya also demonstrated that, because as soon as he got initiated, the first thing he did when he came back from Navadvip was serve everybody. All the people he made fun of, all the people he was considered maybe a little bit mean to. When you go to the Ganges, he would kick dirt on their clothes after they washed them. And, he was a boy, a little rascal of a boy. But after his initiation, he demonstrated the proper conduct of a Vaishnava, that how you serve, not just Vaishnavas, because there's some discrimination, but you serve society. The number one way to serve society is by Harinam Sankirtan. That's the number one process of serving. Prabhupada said we should follow Lord Chaitanya's example. To the public, we chant Hare Krishna. And then any of those who are interested, and in a group like this, we study Srimad Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita. And then with a few intimate devotees, then at that point, in that private setting, you can discuss Krishna Lila, the activities of the gopis, these details discussed in intimate personal settings. And Lord Chaitanya did that. He did public Harinam Sankirtan. He preached to all of his associates. And with Ramananda Roy, Sarup Damodar, Sikhi Mahidi, and Sikhi Mahidi's sister, he discussed the pastimes of Lord Krishna and their intimate relationship. He had first, before he took sannyas, he was sitting, Lord Chaitanya, and he was just saying, Gopi, 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 Gopi. And one of his former students, I think it was a student, or this might not have been his student, came by and heard him chanting, and then started, why are you chanting this Gopi, Gopi, Gopi? You should be chanting Krishna, 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 Krishna. He didn't understand the mood of Lord Chaitanya. And so this is one of the things that, and of course, Lord Chaitanya eventually picked up a stick and chased after him, and of course he ran away, and then when he got back to his friends, he kind of told them what happened, and we're Brahmins. What is this? Nothing. No scripture talks about one should just chant Gopi's name, the Gopis. But this was Lord Chaitanya's mood. It was for a reason, because then he wanted to take sannyas. At this point, he realized that the better for him to preach, to be taken seriously, even though he had the greatest reputation of the greatest pandit in Navadvip. Nobody could defeat him. He had a huge reputation. Still, at that point, there were some who didn't take him as seriously. So he decided to take sannyas. For that, that was one of the reasons that from that position he would be able to preach, and everything he said would be taken, because sannyasis and that social, that ashram is very respected, even at that time. Okay, go ahead. Well, it's in the Gaudiya Math. There are Gaudiya Math temples who you have those deities in there, so it's authorized, and Prabhupada points out in himself that where it's located, it's authorized. It was Gadadhar? Yeah, Gaur Gadadhar. Okay, so there you see. Yeah. And the people in the West probably understood we have no foundation of deity worship, devote these types of activities, and we have to approach through Nityananda. So that it's not that we can't just skip over it. So we have to, there's a proper process. Whereas in this situation, well, obviously Bhaktivinoda Thakur was in an elevated position where he could worship on that platform and see Gadadhar as the as non-different Radharani, which is important because I mean I've had conversations. Sometimes people who are feminists, they say, okay, this is just men. These Lord Chaitanya, and these are all just. But that's not the vision. These are not men. They're wearing a dress of a male, but these are all gopis, almost entirely. All these we're talking about, and it's been revealed here. These are all gopis, and this is just a pastime that they're coming in order to educate society. And it's a big invitation. It's really ultimately what it is. So there's an invitation at this point in time for people to come and take part of this particular pastime, this particular rasa that they're experiencing as a gopi. That's 1 out of 1,000 Kali Yugas and 1 day of Brahma. 1 day of Brahma constitutes 4 cycles. 1,000 of 4 cycles. So out of 1,000, it's Satya Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Only once in 1,000 cycles does Lord Chaitanya come. Once in 1,000 cycles does Krishna come. Lord Chaitanya doesn't come unless Krishna comes, because then he preaches about Krishna. So the other 999 times it's preaching is not Gaur. They're not preaching Krishna conscious in the sense it's all Vishnu. It's all the Lord Vishnu. That's the mantra that's being chanted. The Maha Mantra at that time was to get people to come to the platform of becoming a Vaishnava in the form of awe and reverence, and to go to Vaikuntha and be with Vishnu. That's 999 times. That's how rare this opportunity we have right now, and we're at 1 out of 1,000. That's just 1 day of Brahma. So all the other times that Lord comes in Kali Yuga, and the Maha Mantra, the consciousness is to worship Mahavishnu. So this, you can see how fine-tuned it gets to get this 1 of a Kali Yuga, and then we talk about worshiping Krishna on this level, and then we talk about Gaur Gadadhar, how it's like a big funnel, and it slowly gets down to the very tip of the funnel where you worship in Radharani in a particular, and because ultimately we have to go through Radharani to get Krishna. You have to go through Radharani. You got to go through Nityananda. There's a process. You got to you go through your guru. Nityananda represents the guru. You have to get the shelter, and then eventually you have to also get the mercy of Radharani. That's ultimately to get that prem from Krishna. So I hope that helps a little bit. Okay, let's read another one. I didn't think we'd get off that much on it, but okay. The 3 brothers Govinda, Madhava, Vasudeva were the 82nd, 83rd, and 84th branches of the tree. Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda used to dance in their kirtan performances. The 3 brothers Govinda, Madhava, and Vasudeva Ghosh all belonged to Kashyapa families. Govinda established the Gopinath temple in Argwadweep, where he resided. Madhava Ghosh was expert in performing kirtan. No one within this world could compete with him. He was known as a singer of Vrindavan and was very dear to Nityananda Prabhu. It is said that when the 3 brothers performed Sankirtan, immediately Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda would dance in ecstasy. According to the Gaur Gunadesh Dipika, the 3 brothers were formerly Kalyavati, Rasalasa, and Gunatunga, who recited the songs composed by Sri Vishaka Gopi. The 3 brothers were among one of the 7 parties that performed kirtan when Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu attended the Rath Yatra festival at Jagannath Puri. Vishekvar Pandit was the chief dancer in their party. This is vividly described in the Madhya Lila chapter 13, verses 42 and 43. So here we reminded here again that when there's Sankirtan, Lord Chaitanya incarnates, he enters into that Sankirtan performance. Anytime we have kirtan here, Lord Chaitanya is inaugurated, and he's as the holy name. It describes our tongue. Sometimes it's also described as the mother because it gives birth to the holy name. Every time we chant, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're giving birth to the Lord. And he enters into that kirtan. 116. Ramadas, Abhiram, was fully absorbed in the mellow of friendship. He made a flute of a bamboo stick with 16 knots. Purport. Abhiram was an inhabitant of Kanakula, Krishna, and Arga. So the Gopas, they all had flutes also. Of course, theirs didn't play the sweet melody that Krishna played with his flute. Of course, we just now talking about that in Srimad Bhagavatam. It's a nectar verse, and Maharaj talked about it a little bit just recently in his class. And when that flute, when Krishna plays that flute, and if we ever get fortunate enough, we can actually hear that flute. It's described that, the gopis, they don't hear anything else. It's like they're hearing immediately, they go deaf because they block air. Everything else is blocked out of their ears. It's like described as like birds flying into their ears and creating nests. They can't hear anything else but that flute. And they therefore abandon everything in their homes, and they leave whatever situation they're in, and go directly to Krishna. What? Oh, get closer to the mic. Oh, sorry. So, of course, what they're upset about is with this flute is that it gets the lion's share of Krishna's lips. They come jealous. And there's that verse that what austerities must that flute have performed in order to drink the nectar of Krishna's lips, leaving only a side, just a taste for us. This is how Radharani is thinking. We just get a little bit of taste. That flute getting, the lion's share. And so it's therefore they like to take they want Krishna's lips. They don't want to, they don't want to share it with no flute, But at the same time, without that flute, they wouldn't know when to leave and come and be with Krishna. So it's a love-hate relationship, So it's completely nectar. Gopakumar had his flute when he traveled through trying to get to Goloka Vrindavan, and he made it to Dwarka. And then Krishna took his flute, he saw his flute, and Krishna took his flute, this Vasudeva Krishna, out of Gopakumar's, tucked into his waistband. So for that flute put him in a mood. He immediately started thinking about Vrindavan. He immediately started thinking about the gopis. He immediately started thinking about, so it completely changed his mood. And so he was in this big assembly with all, his associates, all the Yadavas were there, and of course Uddhava was there, and he immediately Uddhava understands exactly what's happening here, and so they in the assembly, and he gets Krishna to leave to go back into his own private quarters because he's completely feeling on a mood that's not conducive to this awe and reverence that everybody's accustomed to in that assembly. And then Gopakumar, he follows. Uddhava brings him with him, and his kids and his close associates, his wives, his queens, they all go with him. And when Gopakumar goes in there, Krishna gives him a vision when he enters these private quarters, and then he doesn't see Krishna. He sees Krishna dressed as a cowboy with his flute, and he sees all his kids are gopas. And all the wives and queens are gopis, for a split second, he sees everything completely different. But then Uddhava brings Krishna out of that mood and that spruti that Gopakumar got, that he's actually trying to attain permanently. That's where he wants to go. Is the deity of his heart is Istadev, that his mantra that he's constantly chanting to attain that relationship. He got a very quick look at it. And it's all because of that flute changed Krishna's mood as Vasudeva Krishna. 117. Powerful that flute is. By the order of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 3 devotees accompanied Lord Nityananda Prabhu when he returned to Bengal to preach. These 3 were Ramdas, Madhava Ghosh, and Vasudeva Ghosh. Govinda Ghosh, however, remained with Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at Jagannath Puri and thus felt great satisfaction. Bhagavad Acharya, Chiranjiva, and Sri Raghulandana, Madhvacharya, Kamala Kanta, Sri Yadunandana were all among the branches of the Chaitanya tree. Purport. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur writes in his Anubhashya, Sri Madhvacharya was the husband of Lord Nityananda's daughter, Ganga Dev. He took initiation from Purusottama, a branch of Nityananda Prabhu. It is said that when Nityananda Prabhu's daughter married Madhvacharya, the Lord gave him the village name Panjin Nargara as a dowry. Madhvacharya's temple is situated near the Jirat railway station on the Eastern Railway. According to the Gora Gunadesh Dipika 169, Sri Madhvacharya was formerly the Gopi, named Madhavi. Kamalakanta belonged to the branch of Sri Advaita Prabhu. His full name was Kamalakanta Vishvasa. 120. Jagai and Madai, the 89th and 19th branches of the tree, were the greatest recipients of Lord Chaitanya's mercy. These 2 brothers were the witness who proved that Lord Chaitanya was rightly named Patita Pavana, the deliverer of the fallen. Purport. In the Gora Gunadesh Dipika, it is said that the 2 brothers Jagai and Magai were formerly the doorkeepers named Jai and Vijay, who later became Hiranyakaksha, Hiranyakashipu. Jagai and Madhai were born in a respectable Brahmin families, and they adopted the professions of thieves and rogues and thus became implicated in all kinds of undesirable activities, especially women hunting, intoxication, gambling. Later, by the grace of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Sri Nityananda Prabhu, they were initiated and they got the chance to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. As a result of chanting, both brothers became exalted devotees of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. The descendants of Madai still exist, and they are respectable Brahmins. The tombs of these 2 brothers, Jagai and Madai, are in a place known as Goshata at Mahitala Gram, which is situated about 1 mile south of Katwa. It is said that Sri Gopi Chandra Das Babaji established a temple of Nitai Gaura at this place about 250 years ago. Both of these brothers, they strive 200,000 names a day. 100,000 is 64 rounds. 200,000 is 128. And then you have Haridas Thakur, who chanted 300,000 names a day. And they approached Nityananda, Jagai and Madai, because of the amount of sinful activity they committed and how many people they offended. It's impossible for them to go back and apologize to every single person in my life that I've committed an offense to. So they were so wrought with their guilt, even though they're chanting. This is the humility of a Vaishnava, and you can see the impact that it had on them. So they said, how do we manage that? How can we can't? There's no way we can apologize to all the different people. We don't even know who it is. Obviously, in a drunken state, you don't even conscious of half the activities you do. So Nityananda said that you all should go build this ghat, this bathing ghat on the Ganga, and then in that ghat you should serve society, serve the devotees, serve everybody, and by serving all society, in that way you can feel a purpose in your activities. So that they did this, and actually if you go to Mayapur and then you go take the boat over to Navadvip, there's a Gaudiya Math temple there at that location where Lord Chaitanya and Nityananda gave mercy to Jagai and Madhai, where that actually he hit Nityananda. So there's that place is and also a place of pilgrimage that people can go and see that. Any questions? Anything? Any comments? We have a few minutes. Yes. You're going to have to speak about. I got Jagai and Madhai, but I didn't get it. Okay. Yeah, so in that purport, they were Jai and Vijay, who were two Sadhaka siddhas, actually, in Vaikuntha. So they were perfectly situated. Siddha means perfect. They achieved their perfection. They were a particular class of sadhakas. But they had a desire to serve Vishnu, and this is the playground for Krishna to come sometimes. And also Vishnu comes to the material world because there's activities that they can do here that they can't do in Vaikuntha, like fight, And so they wanted to facilitate that. So they had this internal desire, and so the arrangement was made, and the story is told in Srimad Bhagavatam, how they committed offense to the four Kumars who came and visited. They wouldn't let them in. They kept them out. They're doorkeepers. They showed up. Who are you? Why do you want, they wouldn't let them in, or so they were cursed. It was an arrangement by the Lord. So then they were cursed. They had a choice. You can have 100 births as devotees, or you can have 3 births as demons. So they felt, okay, we'll do the 3 births as demons. That way we get back here pretty quick. We do our thing, go do it, and come back. But these weren't just ordinary demons. These were, they made Stalin and Hitler look like, little babies. These were enormous, powerful. So Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakasipu were brothers, and each one of these demons, they came as brothers. So Hiranyakasipu was extremely powerful. He performed austerity. It's all described in Srimad Bhagavatam, the type of austerity he performed. He stood on like 1 foot in a yoga pose, and then ants ate his body, and he kept his life hairs in the marrow of his bones, even though without moving, he tolerated that. And so then Brahma eventually came. He was causing all this destruction and this imbalance in the universe. His power of what he was achieving, his austerity, and they came. Brahma eventually came and offered him a benediction with all these powers. He wanted to be immortal. I can't be killed in the day. I can't be killed in the night. No weapons. Just on and on and on. And Brahma gave him everything he wanted. But you don't matter how streetwise you think you are, you're never going to outsmart Krishna. However much plans you make, you're never going to outsmart him, because he always has the way. Okay, thank you very much. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga.